Okay, let's discuss the configurations or the shapes of industrial manipulators. We can also call this a kinematic classification. We said that the ISO definition for a manipulator is a machine in which the mechanisms usually consists of a series of segments jointed or sliding relative to one another for the purpose of grasping and or moving objects, pieces or tools, usually in several degrees of freedom. In order to do so, manipulators consist of links, that is rigid bodies, and they consist of joints, that is parts that enable relative movement between adjacent links. There are two types of joints which are basic types of joints, that is, they provide 1 degree of freedom. There is the prismatic joint. It is the most general 1 degree of freedom translational joint, and it is colloquially also called the sliding joint. It enables translational linear motion between two links. And there is the revolute joint. It is the most general 1 degree of freedom rotational joint, colloquially also called hinge or pin joint, and it enables rotational relative movement between two links. They are abbreviated with P and R. Let's discuss the most prominent serial kinematic mechanisms and parallel kinematic mechanisms. You can see that the abbreviation for the joints such as P and R can be used in order to express their shape. Let's take the example of a Cartesian robot. A Cartesian robot has 3 prismatic joints, so it allows 3 different kinds of translations that is principally displayed in the first column. Its workspace looks like a box or like a rectangle. The machine in itself, or the manipulator, has 3 degrees of freedom, and the object that it manipulates also has 3 degrees of freedom. That means that you can operate a machine tool in X, Y, and Z coordinates, and by doing so, the object that you manipulate on it also can reach to different X, Y, and Z positions. The Cartesian robot, compared to all the other robots in this description, has a comparatively larger footprint, as you can consider that you actually have to build around the workspace, or also called working space, instead of putting the system in the center, which then minimizes its footprint, as is true for all the other robots. Then there is the cylindrical robot. The cylindrical robot has an RPP classification or configuration. So the first joint, that is the one that is closest to its base, has a revolute joint followed by a prismatic and a prismatic joint. Here you can see pictographically in what kind of workspace this results. Interestingly, even though the system is actuated in 3 degrees of freedom, now the object that it manipulates has 4 degrees of freedom, because you can reach different positions, X, Y, and Z, while at the same time you can also rotate around the Z axis of the robot, which gives a different orientation of the object that is being manipulated. The same is true for a spherical robot, which has 2 revolute joints, RRP, which then even results in 5 degrees of freedom for the object that is being manipulated. It should be pointed out that cylindrical robots and spherical robots are not commercially available by some of the biggest robotics manufacturers in the world. That is, as of late, you wouldn't be able to purchase one of these robot types from ABB, Yaskawa, Fanuc, or KUKA. You would actually find those being subsystems of dedicated machinery, but then it's usually self-made solutions by the companies that have developed the dedicated machinery. For example, cylindrical robots can quite commonly found in the pick-and-place appliances of huge storage racks in logistics facilities. Let's look into the commercially available types of robots, starting with the SCARA robot, which has an RRP configuration, which results in 4 degrees of freedom for the manipulated objects, that if you have positions X, Y, and Z, and you have the ability to rotate about the Z-axis of the object. So SCARA is short for Selective Compliance Assembly Robot Arm, and it is used in pick-and-place applications that have tight tolerances for the insertion of objects. Let's have a look in the application video. So here you can once again see that the robot has the position to manipulate objects to X, Y, and Z positions in space, and it has the opportunity to rotate them about the Z-axis. And the selective compliance in the system expresses itself by being compliant in the horizontal plane, so that the robot in this example is actually able to wiggle itself into place in order to insert the batteries into the correct slots. Then there are articulated robots, or serial articulated manipulators, which is the most versatile type of robot that you can find. And they usually have 6 or more degrees of freedom, which results in 6 degrees of freedom of the manipulated object. And one thing to consider is that the object that is being manipulated can have at most 6 degrees of freedom, while having more than 6 degrees of freedom will result into some flexibility, as we will discuss in later on slides. As you can see, the slide shows that dual arm robots are actually part of SKMs and PKMs. That is, I have not found, according to official sources, where it should be placed, but I think it would be equally really valid to consider both, because as you can see in the examples of dual arm robots, it just depends on where you consider the base of the system to be in order to say whether it is a serial kinematic mechanism or whether it's a parallel kinematic mechanism. Let's have a look into the application video of articulated robots. As aforementioned, the systems are multi-purpose and they have 6 degrees of freedom, which actually shows in this application video where robots are used throughout major parts of the manufacturing process of cars. So here you can see the robot in pick and place applications or material handling applications, where they use their ability to translate and reorient the parts in 6 degrees of freedom. Here you can see a dispensing application where they are putting glue on the body in white. And this is a spot welding application for the body in white. Additional applications such as spray painting and assembling or other types of welding are also quite commonly found. So, the articulated robots are the last of the classification of serial kinematic mechanisms, and then there are delta robots or parallel robots. A delta robot is essentially a kind of parallel robot, and the one that you see in the depiction here usually is called a Stewart-Goff platform. And let's have a look into the application video of those. Stewart-Goff platforms in bigger dimensions you probably have also seen in simulators, as for example flight simulators. But the most common application that you will find pick-and-place robots in is in the food industry, where they use their high acceleration and velocities in order to reposition and orient. Okay, then coming back to dual arm robots. People might be tempted to actually say that by classification these are collaborative robots, but as you will see in a later part of definitions when it comes to the robotic fields, this is not quite true, because there are collaborative tasks and each robot that fulfills the requirements to be part of a collaborative task is a collaborative robot. By default, it is true for those dual arm robots. But you could also consider that if you install other sensors, which we will discuss later on, that your articulated robot is actually a collaborative robot. Let's have a look into the application video. So this example shows the Yaskawa SFD series in an assembly task. And it would usually be an assembly task, which is a collaborative task between a robot and a human, because the installation of this robot in a pure assembly task, which does not require a human, would be an waste of money given the price. Okay, let's continue. So, what are SKMs and PKMs? SKMs are serial kinematic mechanisms or machines. That is, they contain only one serial kinematic chain connecting the end effector to the base. You can consider, for example, your arm, or there are parallel kinematic mechanisms which contain two or more serial kinematic chains connecting the end effector to the base. You can, for example, think of your legs. And if we just consider the SKMs and PKMs according to standard industrial performance matrices such as accuracy, speed, work envelopment, payload to weight ratios, and stiffness, we can actually see that the PKMs would outperform the SKMs in all of these. So just to give you some example, let's consider accuracy. One common measure for accuracy is positioning accuracy. And the positioning accuracy of an SKM can be considered to be somewhere in between from 1 to 5 millimeter, which is dependent on the reach also. So, I mean, as you can see in this example, in figure 11, it shows the biggest commercially available robot that is produced by Fanuc, and that has a reach of almost up to 3.5 meters. And at the same time, the biggest Delta robot, which is a parallel kinematic machine, has a reach of 1.5 meters. Then let's consider speed. So SKMs you would find would have a velocity of up to about 1 meter per second and an acceleration around 1 g. PKMs would have a velocity of up to 1.5 meters per second and an acceleration of 3.5 g. Payload. Payload is also very interesting. So the payload that you can expect for a PKM is around 15 kilograms, while the one for an SKM is around 2,500 kilograms for the biggest robots in their class. So, to summarize, PKMs tend to outperform SKMs in a lot of performance matrices. Nevertheless, there are many more SKMs than there are PKMs. And that is due to the fact that they are predominantly found in applications that require precision in either big workspaces and are subjected to small external loads, as for example spot welding applications that require no precision in big workspaces and are subjected to high external loads, as for example material handling applications. So the availability of higher reach on serial kinematic mechanisms combined with the applications is it what makes them much more attractive for industrial applications than, for example, parallel kinematic mechanisms. And I would like to repeat in order to stress that point. So you would mainly find SKMs in applications that require precision in big workspaces and are subjected to small external loads. So you're not using a lot of the payload that is available, but you're going to very precisely reach a point in space, or that are going to require no precision. That is, you don't care whether you're going to be off by 1 to 5 millimeters, but you're subjecting it to high external loads, as for example in material handling applications. A short side note. The serial kinematic mechanism in figure 11 is actually not a serial kinematic mechanism. It is something which is called a quasi-serial kinematic mechanism, and that is due to the fact that, as you can see, there's actually more than one serial kinematic chain connecting the end effector to the base, but the huge differentiation is that this is a passive chain. So this is a kinematic parallelogram that is connected to the gravity compensator in order to compensate for the huge masses of the manipulator itself. But this part is actually not being actuated, while only this lower part is actuated. On the Delta robot, you would actually find that all of these are being actuated. Okay, 6 or more degrees of freedom. So first of all, in order to make the point that serial articulated manipulators can reach all positions and configurations in space, let's have a look what that means in practice. So as you can see, that would provide you with flexibility in order to realize your application. But sometimes that is not enough. And you're going to install a serial articulated robot with 7 degrees of freedom. And in the automotive industry, that is more often found because their workspaces are so expensive per square meter that it makes sense for them to install a more expensive robot, which has the capability to manipulate objects behind walls, as you will be able to see. That is something that only 7 degrees of freedom robots can do. And another aspect of 7 degree of freedom robots is that they are able to maintain a pose of the end effector, as you can see now. So maintain position and orientation while moving the rest of the robot arm, meaning that, for example, in a spray painting application, you can keep your spray nozzle fixed on the point in space while you can move the robot out of the way in order to get another tool close to the car.